Joined right now by Mike Baker, formerly with the CIA. Now he is president and founder of a private intelligence security firm called Diligence. And welcome. Pleasure.
Very much.
Pleasure to have you here. We watch you all the time on Fox News and all over the place.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's talk. And we got so much to talk about. And you're here for the half hour. If you don't leave me in the middle, right? Unless you don't walk out on me and leave me. But this is great. So let's start with the investigation here before we get to foreign policy. It's hard stuff.
It's hard stuff.
Now,
yeah.
I'll agree that the FBI probably did its job, and he was referring to when they spoke with the first bomber who's dead after Russia said, you should talk to this guy. Mm-hmm. But to me, and you tell me if you agree or not, it's the problem that the FBI is not allowed to do their job the right way anymore because they're not allowed to mention jihad or this or that. So what could the FBI do? Yeah,
well, you've got now, and part of the problem is compounded by the fact that, we're now apparently a nation of counterterrorist experts. Right? Everybody, anytime something like this happens, everybody's a freaking expert. So what we're looking at is the FBI did what they're allowed to do within the confines that have been set up because of all the concern over privacy and overreaching and civil liberties. And now, for the most part, much of the media in particular that hates the Patriot Act suddenly can't understand and is outraged why the Bureau didn't just ignore the Constitution and follow this guy around, listen to his communications, do all those things that, yes, the Bureau would love to do.
Right.
If that's what you want to have happen, then quit whining about privacy and civil liberties issues and just accept the fact, not to get lost in the weeds. President Obama made this comment quite a while back. It was one of the more inane things I've heard come out of a White House, where he said it's a false notion of we have to trade off our ideals for security.
Yeah,
and it's not a false notion. More security means fewer liberties, and that's just the trade-off. You have to find a happy point on there, and then quit whining when because something always will happen.
Yeah, well, of course, we've traded in a bunch of civil liberties, quote unquote, for enhanced security. I mean, we take our shoes off at the airport. Mm-hmm. We go and, we subject ourselves to searches and bag searches and whatnot. That's all could be considered civil liberties that we've given up to assure our security. All right, so the FBI, did whatever it could do, but it still seems that there was this lack of communication. I mean, Homeland Security, you got Janet Napolitano, just like with the shoe bomber, she said the system worked. Well, now she's saying everything is good. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. They're their own best cheerleaders. Nobody criticizes anybody. And yet, Deborah Burlingame, who I'm sure you're familiar with, told me the other day that she fears that the communication between law enforcement is worse now. Of course, there was no Department of Homeland Security back then. Is worse now than it was before 9/11.
No, I disagree with that 100%. Look, here's the way this breaks out. The Russians come to us with bare bones information, which is not atypical, right? We got a name, we got a date of birth. Can you check this person out? And we never expect allies, much less the Russians, to open the kimono and tell us everything. But the Russians already had a file on Tamerlan. They'd been tapping him, and they'd been, because of the Chechen separatist issue.
Right,
they didn't care about his radical Islamic views.
Right.
And we come back around to this because this will play into foreign policy in terms of how well Putin's played the White House now over this issue. But they come to it, and that's all they say. And at that time, in 2011, when they look at Tamerlan, they don't see anything that allows them to continue with an open file to do anything about it. So they review it, and then they say, well, we don't see anything, Russia. Do you have anything else on it?
And Russia doesn't tell us anything.
They can't be bothered to tell us anything.
Right.
And so that's the end of it at that time. Mm-hmm. In 2012, when Tamerlan travels overseas, goes to Dagestan, undoubtedly receives training and some resources over there. Do you think the Russians weren't all over him? Of course they were. I mean, that's what the FSB does, and they do it very well.
Why did they grab him then?
Well, I mean, because they're doing what any intel service would do. They're watching him. They're gathering information about who he's meeting.
Right.
Now the file's gotten this big.
Right.
Now Tamerlan comes back to the U.S. Do you think the Russians can be bothered to tell us? It's not in their. They could care less. It's not in their interest.
Right.
They're only going to do whatever's in their interest.
Right.
Now he's back over here. They've made a determination that it's not a separatist issue. It's a radical Islamic issue,
Right.
and the Russians could care less,
Right,
and they don't bother to say anything to us.
because he's over here, and it doesn't affect them over
And
there.
at that point in time, that's when he starts really ramping up the radicalization.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh my God, look at his Facebook page. Look at just Google him."
Yeah.
Well, again, I go back to the same thing. If you want the FBI to go out there and just constantly data mine, constantly go through your Facebook and your tweet,
Then you're losing some civil liberties, right?
Yeah, don't whine about it, and accept that that's what's going to happen.
But why didn't we heard from Janet Napolitano say that he pinged when he left the country, but didn't ping when he came back, and then Lindsey Graham said, well, that's not what I was told yesterday in a closed hearing or whatever, that we were told that there was no trace of him leaving or coming back. So what I'm saying is there some lack of communication going on between law enforcement here in this country? Should he have more than pinged? Shouldn't have something have gone off? And if the FBI talked to him, why right after the bombing? I mean, they might have closed a file, but then don't they have a record of files that or people they talked to, and shouldn't he have been at the top of the list?
Well, look, I mean, how much quicker do the people want this? It's not an episode of CSI or 24.
I know. I am spoiled with that. I do watch that all the time.
This thing moved very quickly in real world terms.
Right.
People want it like this. Well, okay, fine. They had to go through what essentially was 10 terabytes of video. They had all that information to go through.
But didn't they know? Like, in other words, something happens in Boston.
What are they going to do? They're going to do a massive roundup of everybody.
No, not a roundup, but
but
not a file. But I mean, somebody that they talked to because on the advice of Russia.
I understand what you're saying, but you know how many people they talk to? They do a great deal of this. And if again, I keep going back to this. You know where they don't have terrorism? North Korea. They don't have terrorism in North Korea. That's what we would have to have to live in a risk-free world, if that's what we want to call it.
We're talking to Mike Baker, formerly with the CIA and now president of Diligence and founder, a private intelligence and security organization headquartered here in New York City, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. All right, so we find that there's DNA on the bomb, or part of the bomb. Now they say it could have been. I forget what they said, but the pressure cooker could have been handled by a woman in a store.
Could have been a sales clerk.
Whatever. Right. So that's basically not telling us anything at this point. And the mother. And
how unlikable is she?
Oh my God! Before we get to the mother, the FBI takes out bags of evidence, quote unquote, from the widow of the dead terrorist, and somebody saw marked DNA. So do they have reason to believe that she? I mean, they needed a warrant for that, right? So they have reason to believe that she could have been at least involved, not that was her DNA, but at least her DNA might come in handy somewhere down the line, right?
Right. Well, they have to rule it out too. That's the other thing. So they're going through the investigative process. They're going through the step by step. And despite what again, they've been taking a kicking. Almost since they finished. Everybody was they've solved it, and then everybody wants to get into armchair quarterback mode. They're going through what they're very capable of doing, which is this investigative process. So they've taken DNA samples. But again, I don't know that that's really going to be a critical element of it here. What we do know is the Russians are sitting on a great deal of information.
Right.
This is what they do. They've got a great deal of information on Tamerlan and who he met with. Inside that file would tell us, and we got our guys over there trying to recreate his trip, right? Working with our Russian compadres now, and President Obama just recently, the past day,
he thanked Putin, didn't he?
He thanked Putin, and he touted. He's beating the drum, saying, "Look, we're going to have this new aggressive cooperation with Putin." Well, Putin for years now has been trying to get us to basically say, yeah, the Chechen thing, that's terrorism, because that means that anything Putin does in Chechnya from now on,
it's legitimate.
It's a war on terror.
Right.
Putin's played this one. He's a very smart politician.
Yeah. Well, and people, I don't know how many people out there know, because I haven't really heard it brought up, and I watch all the news shows, and you do too, and you're on them. I haven't heard too many people bring up that the Chechnyan terrorists were the ones who killed those school kids, shooting most of them in the back as they ran in Beslan.
It was the Beslan school siege. It was the Moscow State Opera.
Yeah.
Brutal, absolutely brutal conflict between the Chechens and the Russians. But I know. Okay, bring it back closer to home. In terms of the investigation, I've got a lot of confidence in the Bureau. I know for a fact that the level of cooperation, the communication process, the ability to move pieces of information around is vastly improved over where it was pre and post 9/11. Is it perfect? Of course it's not perfect. It's a human endeavor. It's never going to be absolutely perfect. And what happens is we just keep adding more and more and more information in it. There's massive amounts of data that these people are going through on a constant basis. So, but I understand everybody's,
frustration.
Everybody's frustration. It's just, I'm also surprised at the speed with which, parts of the media and others kind of turned on the Bureau for what essentially from the local, state, and federal level was a really, really good job.
Yeah. All right, we're going to come back with Mike Baker right here, and we'll turn our attention to Benghazi, the investigation there, Syria, the double talk on Syria today.
They had an investigation in Benghazi? I had no idea.
It's ongoing.
Oh,
it's ongoing. All right, we're coming back right here on the Steve Malzberg Show.